Economist. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the irreversible collapse that is now underway. Now, of course, we're talking about the collapse of the middle class. Now, when we think about some of the things that are taking place, not only within the current situations with the administration and the tariffs and the constant fighting back and forth between what it is that's actually happening with these global supply chains and the trade partners and the consequences and outcomes that will come from it. Everybody is very concerned about this situation and what it means for essentially their livelihoods. And when I say that many people are concerned, I'm talking about like the middle class and all the working class. Like it's not just the middle class, but the working class in general, people who work paycheck to paycheck, and those who are trying to start businesses or even get out there and try and hustle some sort of idea of what it is that they can do to achieve that American dream idea. But it becomes more difficult as time goes on, and people want to know why. Like, why is this taking place? Why is it even irreversible? Is it reversible now? It's not. And to understand why it's not is key to what it is that you need to do for your future. Like, how is it that you position yourself? How is it you deal with the economy, with your business, with your finance, with your retirement? It becomes very, very, very obscure when you have so much misinformation that is being pushed out there as to reasonings why. Now, we're going to break it down here on this channel. We're going to break it down so that you can understand exactly how it is that the money flows into the system and creates inequality. When you see it, once you recognize it, it becomes so much more understandable of what it is that you need to do. I don't know how many times I've heard, well, we all had to struggle, or we all had to go through it, or we all had to, face those things. We all had to work. It's not the same situation. When it comes to having a day job that is able to earn enough to be able to provide for the wife and the kids and the retirement and the college funds and all the other things that go with it, is a thing of the past, not because of political greed or corporate greed or anything like that. It really comes down to underlying economic forces that had eventually elevated the people's standard of living and moved into luxuries. And it was that move into luxuries that essentially does it. And now nobody wants to blame it on this, but that is what it is. It's the move into luxuries that will create the inequality. It will drive out the domestic manufacturers. It will bring in ever increasing amounts of foreign production, and we will find the inequality taking place. Now, again, I love going back and reading through Cantillon's essay. Cantillon's essay on economic theory is by far the most telling of all the economic theories that I have ever read. It's the oldest one, and it is the most accurate to understanding how money flows into a system. The people who have first access to that money, how it is that they behave with that money, creates the economic conditions that we now face. It's not it's not as simple as if they only. That when I hear that, I think to myself, man, you're going to miss it. If you say that, you're going to miss it because there are underlying economic forces that are at play that will play out every time, because Cantillon wrote this essay hundreds of years ago. Just listen to the abstract of chapter 8. Increases in the supply of money from a balance of trade eventually causes prices to rise. This in turn puts pressure on domestic producers and increases imports. The result is that the balance of trade is reduced and and eventually is negative. This is Cantillon's price specie flow mechanism, which demonstrates the reason for the tendencies for equilibrium in international monetary flows. The balance of trade can result in economic power, but this also causes the economy to lapse into luxuries and decline. That is the key to understanding it. So now, in this very short abstract, this one little tiny paragraph in chapter 8 of Cantillon's essay, It is really easy to recognize how it is that the United States turned into a manufacturing powerhouse, produced the world's greatest stuff. That stuff that went out to the world had the world sending us their gold. When they sent us their gold, we increased our standard of living. Because what are you going to do when you get new money? Like if you get a raise at work or if you take on a new job that pays a lot more, what are you going to do? Are you just like some people will be very disciplined with it, but a lot of people are going to go out there and get a new car or they're going to go out there and they're going to get a nicer place to live. These are the things that people do when they increase their money because there's no better pleasure than to increase one's standard of living. And there's really nothing more painful than to decrease it. Going from living in a house to an apartment, going from driving a new car to some truck. Right? These are the things that are the most painful experiences. And as we see people go through it, we can recognize how it's happening, not necessarily from the greed of other people, which is part of it, but to understand it's an underlying economic force that Cantillon can describe from hundreds of years ago that we can recognize today. Let's break down some of this essay. It goes like this. It says, we have seen that the quantity of money circulating in the state may be increased by working its mines, by subsidies from foreign powers, by the immigration of foreign families, by the residence of ambassadors and travelers, but above all, by the regular and annual balance of trade. And it's right there. That's what Cantillon, what he is describing right there, the annual balance of trade. That is exporting more than you're importing. When you export stuff, you import money. And this is where you can increase the quantity of money the most. Okay? Let's see here. By regularly and annual balance of trade from supplying goods to foreigners and by receiving from at least part of the price in gold and silver. It is by this last means that a state grows most substantially, especially when its trade is accompanied and supported by ample shipping and by a significant output of raw materials necessary for the production of the exported manufactured goods. That right there is the reason why the United States became the world's greatest superpower. We could produce great stuff and we could distribute it out there to the world. And what did they send us? Gold. Gold and silver. That was the money back in the day, prior to the severing of the gold standard. So, this ever increasing amounts of exporting of goods is what gave the United States a position of absolute bounty, where we had all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over time, had accumulated a vast fortune. It gave us the ability to raise our standard of living. We had the highest standard of living in the entire world. He goes on to say, however, the continuation of this commerce gradually introduces great abundance of money and little by little increases consumption. See there? Once you increase your consumption, what do you think is going to take place? Supply demand imbalances, right? If you start increasing consumption, then there's going to be people out there who are going to go like, wait a minute, all these other people who are consuming and I haven't had a chance to do that because I have less access to the money. What do you think is going to end up happening? Foreign products must be imported to meet this demand and must be paid for in the reduction in the annual balance of trade. On the other hand, increased expenditures increase the cost of labor and the price of manufactured goods. It often happens that some foreign countries try to set up the same kinds of factories for themselves, in which case they stop buying those of the state in question. Although these newly established factories and manufacturers are not perfect at first, they reduce and even prevent the exporting of goods from the neighboring state in their own country where they can be acquired at a better price. So here it is, the foreign producers are starting to increase their manufacturing, but building the same products that you were building. And although they may not be as good at first, because they're building them for themselves, they're not buying it from you. And then pretty soon, their neighbors are buying it from them, and they're not buying it from you. This is what the United States was facing, right? As the United States being the manufacturing powerhouse, here we had all our manufacturing leaving. I mean, we can blame it on corporate greed. They shipped our manufacturing jobs overseas. No, it wasn't. Manufacturers leave. They leave because cheaper foreign production is doing a better job of it. In this manner, the state begins to lose some branches of its profitable trade, and many of its workmen and artisans who lose their jobs will leave the state to find employment in new foreign factories. It is in spite of this diminution in the balance of trade, the custom of importing various products will continue. Did you get that? The continuation of importing various products will continue. If the manufactured products of the state have a great reputation and can be shipped to a distant countries at a low cost, the state will continue. I'm sorry. Will reputation and shipped to distance from a great reputation and can be shipped to distance countries at low cost, the state will maintain its advantage over the new foreign manufacturers for many years and will maintain a small balance of trade, or at least keep it even. Now I have to think right there, this is like, I wanted to make sure I read that properly, because I recently think of what's happened with the farmers right now here in the United States, the soybean farmers. Right. So here you got foreign producers who are making it, doing it cheaper, but yet the United States always had the shipping channels to distribute it cheaper than anybody else did. We're losing that advantage now. And this is something that Cantillon had described hundreds of years ago. Let me read it again. The state will maintain its advantage over the new foreign manufacturers. So even though they're producing it cheaper, we were able to transport it. We had established that shipping channel. Right? Will be able to maintain advantage over the new foreign manufacturers for many years to come. For many years, and will maintain a small balance of trade, or at least keep it even. If, however, some other maritime state tries to perfect the same articles and its navigation at the same time, it will, because of the cheapness of manufacturers, take away several branches of trade from the state in question. This is what's happening to the United States and the farmers. They're figuring out the shipping channels and they're producing it cheaper, and we're out the game. Like, we're too expensive and we can't compete. Huh? Let's see here. Because of its cheapness, manufacturers, it will take away several branches from the trade in question. Okay, consequently, the state will begin to lose its balance of trade and will be forced to send a part of its money abroad every year in order to pay for its imports. That right there is the situation that the United States is now in. It will be forced to send part of its money abroad every year in order to pay for its imports. In order to maintain this elevated standard of living that is so wonderful here in the United States, where we enjoy these luxurious experiences, we have to continuously send money. This is something that I think is like quite interesting to think about. How is it that we were in a position in which that we were about ready to relinquish all that gold back out there to the rest of the world because we had our turn with it? Once you have taken all the gold from the world and you have secured it for yourself, and you are saying, okay, now we have the gold, the people who are of that nation gold will begin to buy the production of foreign nation, and the gold will leave, and eventually collapsing the economy. Now, the United States was headed into that, and they severed us from the gold standard, and we went on 100% fiat currency. Ever-increasing amounts of money supply being pushed out of the nation, and ever-increasing amounts of foreign production coming in, and our domestic manufacturers couldn't compete. That's what was happening. Cantillon describes it hundreds of years ago. Okay? It's sad to think about. It's scary to think about because now here we are beyond the manufacturing state. Like that's the part that you wanted to be in. That was the part that all the baby boomers were able to take the most advantage of because that was the time of mass abundance in from all the hardcore, strong manufacturing jobs that produced the standard of living here in the United States that everybody grew. But it came from being a manufacturing state. Well, the manufacturing state no longer exists here. Not like it did, not like in Cantillon's describing here, because what ended up happening? The foreign producers were doing it much cheaper. And we're recognizing what's happening today, right now, with the soy farmers, as they can't compete either. You guys want to hear some more? I mean, we're 313 people watching this right now with 47 likes. 313 people, go out there and hit that like button right now. Hit the thumbs up button. By hitting that thumbs up button, the YouTube algorithm will grab this video, spread it around for more people to understand of what it is that's actually taking place within this economy, within the decision making that you need to do, right? Let's break down some more of this speech, or not the speech, but this essay. Right? It is in this manner that the state begins to lose some branches of its profitable trade, and many of its workmen and artisan who lose their jobs will leave the state. Oh, we already read that, didn't we? Oh, no, we didn't. Oh, no, we did read that part. Sorry. Okay, hold on. Moreover, even, I don't even remember where I left off. Okay. Moreover, even if the state in question could keep a balance of trade and its greater abundance of money, it is reasonable to suppose that this abundance will plunge many wealthy individuals into luxury. Bang. Right? See, this is the problem. This is why you should blame the rich, because the rich actually enjoy their money. But it's not just the rich, it's everybody. Everybody does it. And tell me, if you had a bunch of money, you just got $10 billion, and you just can go out there and just dive into luxury, of course you would, right? Everybody would. You'd be spending money just to see what it felt like to buy things that didn't even care about, right? And like, what does that taste like? $400 what? Oh, wow, that doesn't taste any different. Okay. All right. Sorry guys. I shouldn't act that way. No, we're cool. Here we go. Let's read that again. Moreover, if the state in question could keep a balance of trade and its greater abundance of money, it is reasonable to suppose that this abundance will plunge many wealthy individuals into luxuries. They will buy paintings, precious stones from abroad. They will want silks and rare objects, and they will set such an example of luxury in the state that in spite of the advantage of ordinary trade, its money will flow abroad annually to pay for these luxuries. This will gradually impoverish the state and cause it to pass from great power to great weakness. Right? From great power into great weakness because of the move into luxuries. It's the luxurious experience that will kill the economy, that will kill the American dream, the idea that everybody could go out there and have what it is that would be a family raised home with all the wonderfulness that everybody could ever have anticipated, right? It was the move into luxuries that killed it. Sorry to tell you. The dream of having a new car, right? All those people who worked hard, acquired it, went in there and dove into luxuries. This is the reason why it happened. I mean, obviously, it was more of the wealthy individuals who did it, but everybody did their part. Sorry to say it, that's what did it, right? Cantillon described it a long time ago. It ain't me who's telling you, it's Cantillon. I'm just, relaying the message here. It goes on to say, when a state has arrived at its highest point of wealth, and I always assume that the comparative wealth of the state consists mainly in their representative quantities of money, it will inevitably fall back into poverty by the ordinary course of things. When the money printer turns off, when the Federal Reserve is no longer conducting their monetary policy in the way that we all look at and say, oh man, they shouldn't be doing that. They got to end this. This is a bad thing. When the new money turns off, that really begins. Everybody falls into poverty. Everybody does. Not just the rich. The rich lose it. Yeah, there's a bunch of people who are rich, they'll lose it. Everybody falls into poverty. And this is the ordinary course of things. Let me read it again. It's scary. That's the scariest part of it all. It's like, man, they should stop doing that. And the moment that they do, there's hell to pay. All right. When a state has arrived at its highest point of wealth, and I always assume that the comparative wealth of the state consists mainly in their respective quantity of money, it will inevitably fall back into poverty by four things. The too great abundance of money, right? Too great abundance of money. Oh, I wonder what the United States has. Too great of abundance of money. Right? The too great abundance of money, which gives power to the states so long as it lasts, throws them back imperceptibly. I got by but naturally into poverty. Thus, it would seem that when a state expands by trade and the abundance of money raises the price of land and labor, the prince or legislator ought to withdraw the money from circulation, keep it for emergencies, and try to slow down its circulation by every means, except compulsion and bad faith, to prevent its goods from becoming too expensive and avoid the drawbacks of luxury. They should tell you, stop spending your money on fun things. Stop enjoying it. The moment that you do, the problems begin. This is what Cantillon was describing, the drawbacks of luxury. See, we had a chance, but people really want to enjoy their hard work. Can you blame them? People tell me all the time, why don't you go out and get a new car? And I'm thinking, why? So that I can fall into the same problems that Cantillon is describing by the drawbacks of luxury? The moment that the new money turns off, your luxurious life becomes a very painful experience, as there's nothing worse than to lower your standard of living and nothing more pleasurable than to increase it. Do we not see how this is going down now? It's the luxurious experience. Yeah, you can blame the wealthy. They want to enjoy the money. Who wouldn't? The moment that they enjoy the money, everything starts to fall apart. Let's continue on. However, it is not easy to perceive the opportune time for this, or to know when the money has become more abundant than it ought to be for the good and the preservation of the advantages of the state. Therefore, princes and heads of republics do not concern themselves much with this sort of knowledge, and strive only to make use of the abundance of their state revenues to extend their power and to insult other countries in the most frivolous of pretexts. Some things just never change, do they? I love the part right here where he talks about they just don't trouble themselves. How did he put it? They don't concern themselves much with this sort of knowledge. No kidding, they don't. I mean, here it is. The Uneducated Economist was trying to explain the neutral interest rate to everybody for the last 4 years. It is that the elevated inflation and inflation expectation was actually saving the monetary policy for the Federal Reserve. Nobody was out there describing it, especially the powers that be. Right? They don't concern themselves with this sort of knowledge, and they strive only to make use of the abundance of their state revenues to extend their power and to insult other countries on the most frivolous of pretexts. Bang. Man, how many times have we seen that? That's why I don't like politics, man, because that's what they do. They don't understand economics, and then they go and use it for the stupidest of reasons. Right? That's why I own company. That's why I don't look at the politics out there and say, oh man, they're in charge of everything that I have going on in my life. To me, I try to make them as irrelevant as possible. All things considered, working to perpetuate the glory of talking about the powers of all these legislators out there, the powers of the reigns and administration, and leave monuments of power and wealth is perhaps the best that they can do, because according to the natural course of humanity, the state must collapse on its own. The powers that be, they only accelerate its fall a little. It's not them, it was the move into luxuries. The buying of luxuries, creating the inequality, moving out of the domestic manufacturers, ever increasing amounts of foreign production, it was because of the move into luxuries. That's what did it. These politicians, they're fun to blame, but they only accelerated its fall a little. We want to blame them. We say that it's their reason. It's not. The reason why it's falling so fast is because the top are diving into luxuries at an ever increasing rate. This is the problem. There's nothing we can do about it at this point. People say, what is it that we can do to reverse it? It's irreversible. You can't stop it, right? You can't stop this from continuing on. Nevertheless, it seems that they should try to make their power last during the time of their own administration, but they don't. Right? They don't. Few years are needed to raise abundance to the highest point in a state. However, still fewer are needed to bring it into poverty for the lack of commerce and manufacturing. See, we're lucky. We got commerce. That's the difference. Commerce and manufacturing. We lost our manufacturing. We didn't lose it all. We got some, not enough. Not enough to compete. Right? So here we got the lack of commerce and manufacturing that would drive them into poverty, but we have commerce still. We artificially produce it. We have ever increasing amounts of new money coming into the country, not because we have a gold or silver mine or awesome manufacturing that has everybody bringing their money to us. We're out of thin air. See, I loved it when I heard Donald Trump saying that we're going to get our fair share back from all these nations and that they're tired, that he's tired of them ripping us off. And I'm thinking to myself, ripping them off? I mean, they're using their time, their resources, their people, their energy, their labor, building wonderful things and sending it to us so we enjoy the luxurious experience that we are, and we're not paying anything for it except for an empty paper promise to pay into the future with more empty paper promises, and they're ripping us off? Well, whatever. That's what, again, this is why I own my own economy, because I just don't believe that. Like, I don't believe that for a second, that they're ripping us off. Here we are. We're enjoying the most luxurious experience of anybody else in the world, and we're hardly paying for it with anything at all except for an empty paper promise to pay into the future with more empty paper promises. Keep hitting that thumbs up, guys. See, this is why I love this essay. When you read through this essay and you recognize what it is that he was describing from the economic forces, and then you look at what's going on today, everything starts to line up and make sense. Everything does. Like even this 200 plus year old essay, he goes on to say here, listen to this. Like this, I just see the super chat. I'll check that out here in just a second, guys. I know no better measure than the leases and rents of property owners to judge the abundance and scarcity of money in circulation. When land is leased at high rates, it's a sign that there is plenty of money in the state. And when land has to be leased at much lower rates, it shows, other things being equal, that money is scarce. Okay. I love reading this speech, guys. I love breaking this stuff down for you. I love recognizing the underlying economic forces that are talked about inside of here that we recognize today. It's just incredible. You know, I mean, okay. Attributes this fall to recent deficits in consumption. Okay. In fact, it seems that here, I'm just kind of breaking this down. I'm just going to jump a little bit further into it. It says, in fact, it seems that he observed, talking about the rise and fall of rents being part of the inflationary pressure. He says, or being price discrepancies. Anyway, in fact, it seems that he had observed that a reduction in wine consumption. However, I think he was mistaken the effect for the cause. The cause was the great rarity among France, and the effect of this was naturally a decrease in consumption, right? So what he was recognizing was a decrease of money, and when you have a decrease of money, you have a decrease in consumption. Increase in money and increase in consumption. When you increase the consumption, you start to increase the supply-demand imbalances, which then causes the prices to rise. In this essay, I have always suggested contrary, that an abundance of money naturally increases consumption and contributes above everything else to a higher valuation of the land. Here we go. When abundant money raises products to honest prices, the inhabitants eagerly work to acquire them, although they do not show the same eagerness to acquire food and merchandise beyond what is needed for their maintenance. That is so true today. Let me read that again. Right? When the abundant money raises products to honest prices, the inhabitants eagerly work to acquire them. Everybody works real hard to make a living. Everybody works, busting their butt 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, although they do not show the same eagerness to acquire food and merchandise beyond what is needed for their maintenance. They only work as hard as they need to. That is the majority of the people out there. Yeah. Let me check out this super chat real quick and then we'll continue on. Thank you so much for joining in on today's live stream tonight. We got 433 people watching with 149 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. Thank you so much for the support. You easily can support the Uneducated Economist by hitting that like button. So reach out there and hit that thumbs up. Ordinary Bitcoin, thank you so much for the $1.99. No way to call precisely when the music stops, though. You're so right about that. See, this is the thing. Like many times you probably could have heard how many like stories you heard about the dollar has failed, the dollar's done, the dollar's over. And if you would have asked me back in like say 2010 going into 2011, I would have told you the exact same thing. In fact, I would have told you back then that the dollar probably didn't have much more than 5 years left to it. And here it is many years later, and still seems to be ticking along. And when I think about some of the things that I had in my head for reasonings for believing that the dollar was about ready to fail, I hear those things being pushed out there yet again. And the idea that the dollar is going to fail because of the money printer go burr, a lot of times people have just isolated themselves into believing into the United States and only thinking about the United States. Very few people actually take into consideration that the dollar is a world reserve currency. And when they hear that the BRICS want to get out and the abandonment of the dollar and all this other stuff that you hear, it's very difficult to get out of the dollar when there is so many dollar denominated contracts and literally nothing else to use except for a limited amount of foreign nations' currencies in order to do international trade with. The dollar is it. Now, we're going to discuss more into the Cantillon essay, but just knowing that the ever expansion of dollars is now giving the United States a very terrible condition of inequality that is going to continue going into the future so long as people move into luxuries. If we are a consumer nation, there is no way that you cannot move into luxuries. Everything is brand new that comes into the country. That is a luxurious experience. So there's literally that nothing can happen. It's irreversible, right? The only thing that can happen is the turning off of the new money and the collapse of the dollar, and everybody falls into pain and misery. And, you'll be thankful that you had your gold and silver. Okay. It is clear that the state with more money in circulation than its neighbors has an advantage over them so long as it maintains this abundance of money. In the first place, given that the price of land and labor are circulated in terms of money, the state where money is most abundant will give up less land and labor than it receives in all areas of trade. Thus, the state in question sometimes receives abundance of two products. Actually, this is pretty interesting. I'm going to read the rest of this just because of it explains how it is that other nations do so well, but I'm going to skip ahead off of after I read through this. But it's pretty good to get I'm sorry, guys, I shouldn't have interrupted. Okay. Thus, the state in question sometimes receives a product of 2 acres of land in exchange for that of 1 acre, and the work of 2 men for that of only 1. It is because of this abundance of money in circulation in London that the work of 1 English embroiderer costs more than that of 10 Chinese embroiderers. Now, that's the key to understanding it right there. Right? This is the reason why your manufacturing job left, is because it's too expensive. The one embroiderer here in England back in Cantillon's Day, talking about the English embroider costing more than that of 10 Chinese embroiders, although the Chinese embroiders uh, are much better and churn out more work in a day. In Europe, people are amazed that these people can live by working so cheap and that the wonderful fabrics they send us cost so little. Now, that's why I say, like, I'm not trying to be mean or arrogant or anything like that when I say you can't compete against who's over there sleeping on the ground, because that's essentially what's going on. Like, you want to bring good manufacturing jobs back to the United States. So you want to sleep on the ground and not have a house, barely wear any clothes, not have anything to really eat, then you can compete, because that's what you're competing against, is people who are doing that. And that's the difficult time. That's very hard. All right. You can't really do it. All right. Hold on, guys. You can buy this essay off of Amazon. There's a link down in the description. That you can buy the essay from Amazon, and I get a little tiny commission off of it. So thank you. If you want to get the essay from Amazon, you can just click on that affiliate link. But you do not have to buy the essay off of Amazon. You can get it for free at the Mises Institute. So just type in Cantillon essay on economic theory, and you can go and download the essay for free. All right. Okay, here we go. Talking about the borrowing. All right. So borrowing money, as far as, like, creating ever increasing amounts of new money. The borrowing road, which holds an advantage in the present, leads to a dead end and is but a flash in the pan. To restore a poor state with a shortage of money, a constant and real balance of trade is needed on an annual basis, and is development through navigation of the articles of manufacturers produced cheaper and thereby suitable for exportation. Merchants are first to make their fortunes, then lawyers may get part of it. The prince and tax collectors get a share at the expense of all others and distribute their graces as they please. When money becomes too plentiful in the state, luxuries will follow and the state will fall into poverty. See how many times he recognizes it? Like, state will, luxuries will follow. Once the money becomes plentiful, if there's plenty of money in the state, people will enjoy that money and they will buy into luxuries, and the problem will to fall into poverty. Okay? It's just a matter of time. Let me check out. I think I got another super chat. Oops. Oh shit! Where'd you guys go? Sorry about that. You all right? You guys okay? All right. Okay, there it is. We got Infamous NYC with the $5. Thank you so much. In my opinion, the carbon credit nonsense is used to economy in the UK and is failing. The state is preparing with surveillance. Well, I mean, I think all those are probably symptoms of the situation, but we really have to think about what it is that's taking place from the underlying economic force of it. Excuse me. And that is that the new money that poured in for as long as it has. Like, if you have any position in which that you can have ever increasing amounts of new money, whether, like, you think about it, China has, like, done this Belt and Road Initiative, and so when they are out there lending money to people, they're lending money in dollars, and now those dollars have to come back to China, and this is all done in US dollars, which is crazy to think about, right? But now, in a position in which that they are like, oh man, our manufacturing is slowing down because we got this world recession thing going on or whatever. Well, they have dollars that are still coming to them because they're not just trying to sell their products. They done lent this money out there to foreign nations, just like if they had lent their money out to anybody else, and they have to pay them the dollars. So figuring out ways of getting new money in Now, whether it's doing this Belt and Road Initiative, or if you're producing stuff, or if you just happen to figure out that the entire world will trust you to pay back your promises, and you can sell a bunch of U.S. Treasury debt like the United States has, then you can have ever increasing amounts of new money that comes in. And this is which will eventually lead into the problems that we have, with the move into luxuries and whatnot. Um, Here we go. The last method I can think of to increase the quantity of money actually circulating in the state is by violence and arms. And this method is often blended with others since in all peace treaties one will try to maintain trading rights and other privileges one could in privileges one could obtain. When the state mandates contributions or makes several other states tributary to it, this is very sure method of obtaining their money, right? I mean, right? This is why it's difficult to recognize it today from hundreds of years ago if you don't know it from hundreds of years ago. Like hearing it the way I just explained it, how China is doing it with this Belt and Road Initiative, which people are like, oh, that's totally different. That wasn't the same thing, right? But when a state maintains contributions of makes several other states tributary to it, this is very sure method of obtaining their money. I will not examine the methods of putting this theory into practice, but I will say that all the nations who have flourished in this manner have not failed to decline like states that have flourished through their commerce. It's the same story over and over again, right? So here it is. Gosh, we have a lot of people watching. Hold on one second, guys. Okay, let me go back there. Okay, so let me read that one more time. I will not examine the methods of putting this theory into practice, but I will say that all the nations who have flourished in this manner, who have not failed to decline, like states who have flourished through their commerce, just like the United States has done, right? The United States flourished through the commerce. They try to do it through arms and violence. They're doing everything that they can in order to maintain this ability to have ever increasing amounts of new money pouring into the system, because if you don't do it, you will fail. You will fall into luxury, or you will fall into decline. Um, the ancient Romans were more powerful in this manner than all the other peoples we know of. Nevertheless, these same Romans, before losing an inch of their land of their vast states, fell into decadence through luxury and impoverished themselves by the reduction of money which circulated among them, and it was this luxury that caused their empire to pass into the hands of the eastern nations of the Orient. Right? They were buying all those products of those foreign nations, all this money that was circulating through the Romans. They were doing all this conquering and everything else, and they had all this great money with them, but it all through their luxurious experience ended up moving into the eastern nations of the Orient. So long as Romans' luxury, which did not begin until after the defeat of Antiochus, king of Asia, around the 564, came from products of the land and labor of the vast estates of their dominion. The circulation of money only increased instead of decreasing. The public was in possession of all the gold, silver, and copper mines in the empire. They had the gold mines of Asia, Macedonia, Aquilia, and the rich mines, both gold and silver, of Spain and other countries. They had several mints where gold and silver copper coins were struck. In Rome, the consumption of all the goods and merchandise drawn from their vast provinces did not diminish the circulation of money any more than the pictures, statues, and jewels themselves. Although the wealthy landlords spent excessive amounts for their feast and paid 15,000 ounces of silver for a single fish, All that did not diminish the quantity of money circulating in Rome, given that the provinces made tributes regularly, not to mention that the money brought in by the lenders and by the governors with their extortions. The amounts annually extracted from the mines increased circulation in Rome during Augustus' whole reign. However, luxuries was already on a very great scale, and there was much eagerness not only for the curiosities produced in the empire, but also for jewels from India, pepper and spices, and all the rarities of Arabia. Silks, which were not made in the empire, began to be in demand there. Nevertheless, the money drawn from the mines still exceeded the sums sent out of the empire to buy all these things. However, under Tiberius, money became scarce. When that emperor collected 2.7 billion sesterces, I'm sorry guys, I'm terrible at some of these, in his treasury to restore an abundant circulation. He only needed to borrow 300 million on mortgages of his estate. After his death, Caligula spent all the Tiberius treasury in less than 1 year, and it was then that the abundance of money in circulation that was at its highest in Rome, and the wind of luxury kept on blowing. The historian Pliny estimated that in his time the emperor exported at least 100 million sesterces. I gotta learn how to say that word annually. This was more than was drawn from the mines under Trajan. Under the Trajan, land prices fell by 1/3 or more, according to the younger Pliny, and money continued to decrease until the time of the Emperor Septimus Severus. Money was then so scarce in Rome that the emperor collected enormous quantities of wheat, being unable to collect enough tax money for his enterprise. Thus, the Roman Empire declined through the loss of its money before losing any of its estates. That is what luxury brought about and what it always will bring about in similar circumstances. So it's knowing that it's the move into luxuries. Think about how many times he repeated it over and over again, warning the people that if you have a great abundance of money that is flowing into the state, that if you move into a luxurious experience with it, that you will create the downfall and eventually move into poverty. It is the decline. It's sad to see it. Like, I don't like it this way. I don't want it to be this way. I wish there was something that could be done about it. But the only thing that I can see that could ever possibly happen to make any kind of difference is for you to understand what it is that you need to do in accordance to the situation we now face, because there is zero doubt in my mind that we are going to have ever increasing amounts of new money, and there is going to be ever increasing amounts of an attempt to get into a luxurious experience, which is going to make the problem that much more worse. Right? No other option. Like literally none. I mean, the only other option is a painful experience. And as people go like, "Oh man, it's a painful experience now," it was like not even close to what it could be. Yeah, it sucks, right? But once you know what to do, once you understand that there's something that you need to do, because there's no way that a politician can fix this. There's no banker who can come in and fix this. The dive into luxury that had separated the rich from the poor and moved all the domestic manufacturers out and brought ever increasing amounts of foreign production in, that is not going to change. The moment that it does, we have a complete collapse of the system. So what are you going to do? What could we possibly do? There's nothing, right? Except understand that our day job won't be enough anymore, because we're no longer competitive. We don't compete against the people out there who sleep on the ground. So our day jobs are not competitive. They are going to barely cut it, barely squeak by a living off of it, right? Maybe live paycheck to paycheck. So we're going to have to know that we have to put out that much more effort, that much more time, that much more energy into something that is beyond that of what it is that we are calling our day job, right? Earn extra money, all the money beyond the money you're already making. And this is like, I mean, I say it over and over again, but once you have seen these underlying economic forces playing out, once you recognize it in this fashion, it then starts to alleviate like, think about it this way. It actually is a benefit. It alleviates a lot of pressure because a lot of people have a lot of weight and anxiety and thought and feeling that there is something out there that is going to make a difference and everything is just going to be okay. It's not, right? It's not going to be okay. It's not going to be okay because understanding how it is that the economy ends up getting separated when you have ever increasing amounts of new money, foreign production, the exiting of domestic, like when you see that happening, there's no reversal to it. You know that things are going to be much different than they were, right? As simple as that. So now, taking that extra money and being able to position yourself so that you can have a decent return. This is something that Cantillon actually addresses. Here, let me bring it up for you guys so I can show you. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Says here, the industrious people who are eager to acquire property will not at first increase their expenditures. They will wait until they have accumulated a large sum from which that they can draw a secure interest income, independent of their occupation. Those are the people who become property owners. See, people ask me all the time, how come you don't go out there and get a house? How come you don't? It's like, because I'm trying to secure a decent rate of interest beyond that of my occupation. See, this is what the people do. Let me read it again. The industrious people who are eager to acquire property will not at first increase their expenditures. See, I drive a 97 Suburban. I don't increase my expenditures. They will wait until they have accumulated a large sum from which that they can draw a secure rate of interest of income. Yeah, I have a portfolio, like a stock portfolio, Bitcoin portfolio, that's built up quite a bit, right? So that they can get will not at first increase. They will wait till they have accumulated a large sum so that they can get a secure rate of interest beyond that of their occupation. Once a large number of inhabitants have acquired considerable fortunes from this money, which enters the state regularly and annually, they will not fail to increase their consumption and raise the price of everything. See, this is the way it goes down, no matter what. See, even if you hold back, at some point you are going to move into the next step. If you have become industrious and you are producing and saving, like regardless of what anybody else is doing out there, you as the individual have figured out how it is that you can cut back on your expenses, go out there, be very industrious, be able to make a lot of money, save a lot of money, take that money, deploy it into something that starts gaining traction in building on its own, having a secure rate of return on it, whether it's buying into dividend paying stocks, bonds, a business, or doing something that has some sort of return on it. When that happens, they start buying into the property. This is how property owners do it. This is how Cantillon described it from a long time ago. These are the people who end up feeling and being free from all what would be the strain of the working class curse, where you live paycheck to paycheck. These people live independently of that, right? And as individuals get angry with them, I'm thinking Cantillon recognized it. Industrious people did not deploy that money into experiences of luxury. They held back, deployed it into a rate of return, then secured that, and then bought property. Wow, does it sound familiar? Like, how many people have told you to do that? Every single person who's rich? I mean, Cantillon said it in like three sentences. All right, let's read through some of these comments here. Thank you all for joining in. We got 54 minutes into this live stream. My goodness, 435 people watching with 216 likes. 435 people, go hit that like button. Let's get it up to 400 likes. All right. Only people with money will lose and currency collapse. The ones in debt are free and clear. Uh, the ones in debt are not free and clear. They suffer the most because they're going to lose all their stuff too. All right. Apple Eden, thank you so much for the $10. I've been watching you for half a year, first time donating. What would you say to the people who think American empire will collapse for debasing its currency like empires past? Difference now is crypto. Okay. It's hard to compare the United States. Thank you so much too for the $10 super chat. It's very generous of you. What was the name again? Apple Eden. I like it. Okay. So we have to think like we're not really experiencing anything from the past. So it's hard to take anything from history of currencies and consider what it is that's taken place now with the US dollar because it's nothing of the same. However, the currency collapse I don't think is going to take place when you have the push into tokenization of the dollar in a way that can remove cash from the system and then give the ability to deploy negative interest rates because essentially you won't be able to pull your money out, right? And now this isn't something that I have made up or come up with a theory for. This is something that we have talked about many times on this channel because this is what the IMF and the Bureau of International Settlements essentially talked about back in like 2018 or something. Long before all the talk of central bank digital currencies and stuff like that, they were talking about how it is that they could go into negative interest rates. And ultimately, you have to have a cashless society. So their main burden on going into negative interest rates is cash being in the system. Well, the only way to really get cash out of the system is to have something like a digital currency. A tokenization of the dollar would simply be the perfect solution for this idea that you could have two currencies, dollars and e-currency. Well, if you have dollars and tokenized currency like stable coins, well, then you have the situation solved. Once you get all the cash out of the system, or at least make cash such a nuisance that nobody would want to use it, now the central bank has the ability to take interest rates below the lower bound of zero because you can't pull your cash out. Now, I know that's kind of like just a glossing over. We could go much deeper into it, and we have talked about this quite a bit in the past. But that's ultimately what I believe has taken place. I don't think the dollar is going to collapse. I just don't think so. I think there's way, way, way too much demand for dollars outside of the United States to give any kind of like idea that it's going to collapse. The problem that we are going to face is how is it that the Federal Reserve is going to be able to print up enough dollars fast enough to cover all the dollar denominated debt without sending the United States government on an unsustainable debt path? Well, they're already on an unsustainable debt path without sending them into unsustainable debt. They can't. That they cannot do. But they already have a solution for it. And Ben Bernanke already talked about it like literally 20 plus years ago, 23 years ago, November of 2002. So, yeah, literally coming on 23 years ago. In that speech, deflation, how to prevent it from ever occurring, he said it straight up in there. I don't have it right in front of me, but you can go and look it up for yourself. He said it straight up in there that the United States has the authority, or not the United States, the Federal Reserve, right, has the authority to buy foreign debt, the sovereign debt of a foreign nation, and put it on their balance sheet. So when I think about, man, if they ever came into a situation in which that the demand for dollars was exploding because all this debt is coming due and nobody knows exactly how much and how big it really is, what is it that the Federal Reserve could possibly do in order to provide the world with enough dollars to cover all that dollar denominated debt without absolutely destroying the government? That is it. They can buy the debt of a foreign nation, but really the best way to do it is to make sure that it's done through digital currency so you can track, trace, and control everywhere that dollar goes. Does not, I mean, to me, that makes sense. I know that for a lot of people, this might be mind blowing and the first time they ever heard of it, and maybe even overwhelmed by the idea of what I just said. But ultimately, that makes the most sense to me because, well, eventually they're going to have to figure out a way to produce a consumer, which means ever increasing amounts of new money coming into the system, like ever increasing amounts of it, and injected directly into the people's pockets in order to produce a consumer. That's going to be the United States job, producing a consumer to buy the world's stuff so that the world can continue to get the dollars they need to do the transactions of the world. Scary situation going into it. I mean, a lot of people get excited by the idea that they're going to get UBI. When I say that, like they're going to do direct money injections forever, and they're like, oh, what a relief. And I'm thinking, no, this is like permanently locking you in to the bottom side of the wedge. It's like it's going to guarantee you will never have a chance of ever getting above it, because you're going to have to work so much harder to acquire the money that you need in order to get the investments beyond, like, it's just, and so much luxury, so much diving into luxury, because literally the money injection is deliberately forcing the move into luxury. It's like literally what they're doing. It's like, here, go get into luxuries. Go buy more foreign production, get out there and do more commerce. And so they'll just inject the money right into the people. And then there'll be some smart individuals who will recognize that and say, man, I'm not doing it. And they will deploy that money into it, like whatever money they get, they will put it into stocks and bonds and returns and businesses or whatever. And they will be on the top side of the wedge, so much farther away from a working class individual who's wondering, going, oh man, when are they going to increase our UBI checks? Because that's the only chance they have. That's what I see. What do you guys want to talk about next? All right. You have to get closer to the new money further up the chain. Yeah, that's it, Standard Nursery. Absolutely right. Once you get closer, like once you figure out that the people who are really doing it are people who are borrowing that money and then buying cash flowing assets. Okay? And I know, like, for a lot of people that sounds scary, and I'm not just like going out there telling everybody, hey, borrow money and go buy rental properties. I'm just saying that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. The ability for them to do it is there, so they do it. Now, a lot of other people will borrow money and then go buy a Lexus. Or whatever. I don't know, a fancy car. I don't know. Is Lexus a fancy car? I don't know. Go buy, a Mercedes or a BMW or, something like that. And this is literally like, now you have to work to pay that back, where somebody else is sitting back watching somebody else work to pay their asset back, and then at the end of it they have the asset and they have some extra money. Extra money, the money beyond the money they're already making. And they just do this over and over again, constantly just loading up on it. All right. Lexus is a fancy car. You shadow banned live, didn't show up. Yeah, Sam, thank you for being here, Sam Fox. I really appreciate it. And one of the ways that you can help out as far as the shadow banning, I don't think the Uneducated Economist is necessarily shadow banned, but I'm not pushed out there through the algorithm like other YouTubers are. And I honestly, it doesn't really concern me as much as I wish the message would get out there, right? Like, I love hanging out with 40 people as much as I like hanging out with 413 people. But to think that, the message doesn't really necessarily get out there, but, we're constantly just kind of hanging out with the same group, that is kind of a bummer. So sharing the video is the ultimate way to get the YouTube algorithm to also share the video. And we can get more people in here learning it for the first time. They'll ask those questions about, like, oh, well, how about a return back to the gold standard? And we can discuss it yet again and break it down one more time and find out why it is that a gold standard would be a very difficult thing for us to operate in, considering how luxurious of an experience that we are getting here in the United States, importing all this stuff. The moment we go on a gold standard, we export gold. We import stuff and export gold, and we all fall into pain and misery once the gold is gone. All right. Down the coast in East County, San Diego, listening. What a great night sky. Right on, Dave. Well, thank you for being here. All right, deplorable. I don't mind telling you you should borrow as much money as you possibly can and buy rental properties. Right on, deplorable. Good for you. Yeah. I mean, that's what all the rich people I know do. All right. Is there a point in cheap Mexican labor like the music is nice, but it's loud? Is silver and gold a good investment? No, art, it's not a good investment. And I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing to buy. I'm saying that it's not a good investment because investments have a return. You have to think investments are dividend paying stocks, a business that increases its production and value, rental properties, bonds. Like these are things that pay you, right? Gold doesn't pay you. Silver doesn't pay you. I mean, silver miners, right? That's an investment, but the silver itself is not. It's a speculation. So to understand the difference between a speculation and investment is critical to where it is that you put your money. Bitcoin is a speculation. Silver is a speculation. Rental properties is an investment. Bonds are an investment. Stocks are an investment, especially, dividend paying stocks. These are things that pay you. So when you look at like gold as an investment, then you are actually giving it a characteristic that it really doesn't have. It's like asking the dollar to hold value. It doesn't do it. There's no point in asking it to do it because that's not what it does. It's a transfer of goods and services to other goods and services. It does a great job of that, but to ask for the dollar to hold value is like almost ridiculous in that sense. In this, you want to have it in gold and silver, right? Because gold and silver hold value, or at least the idea behind it will hold value over time. But ultimately, if you wanted to gain value, then you're looking at it as the greater fool theory. Somebody's going to pay a higher price for it than what I'm paying for it. Now, if you're looking at silver and saying, oh no, man, industrial metal, all this demand for it, it's going to go way up, and then the value of it's going to be up there because all this demand for the silver is going to cause the price to be up there, I could kind of agree with it. But again, that's still a speculation inside of it that you're planning on selling it for a higher price to somebody else than what you had paid for it. So, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I buy Bitcoin. In fact, Bitcoin and silver, Bitcoin and precious metals are a huge position. Like, outside maybe the real estate or the equity in the real estate of my house, that is the biggest position that I have is Bitcoin and precious metals. But I don't look at them as investments. I look at them as speculations. And silver and gold specifically, I look at as insurance policies. I don't even think about them ever like being like, oh man, I'm going to make all this money off of it. And then I'm going to be out there buying Lambos or something with my silver once it goes up to $500 or $5,000 an ounce or something. That is like the last thing on my mind. It is not what I consider silver for. What I do with it is I buy regularly when I can, when it's not at all-time highs, and then I position myself in a way that I use it as an insurance policy that says, hey, if anything ever was to collapse within the banking industry, within the governments, whatever, I have something that is separated away from them because I don't have to worry about even the government helping me protect my land with landowner rights or something of that nature. This is something that I am 100% in custody of with nobody else to consider, and that is very unique, right? And that's a cool thing. So I'm not trying to like knock it. What I'm trying to say is I don't give it meaning as an investment. I give it meaning as an insurance policy. As long as we're all buying it, I mean, that's what's important, right? As long as we're all in possession of it. Why you buy it and why I buy it doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing. But when I see it move up to $50 an ounce, I don't get excited. And when I see it fall, I don't get worried, and I don't think about anything other than how many ounces can I put to the stack this month? Or am I going to at all? All right. Simon, thoughts on Fannie Mae and Freddie 40, 50-year mortgages? Could that be a tool used to stimulate house prices higher over the time? The bullet traders, I think that will be sold as a benefit to the people in order for them to be able to make the payment on a house to get into it. It'll end up being like generational loans and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's not going to really help, right? As it's going to concentrate the housing even more. It's going to make it even more difficult for the people, the working class individual, to get into a house, because then everybody's going to have to take out 40, 50-year loans, in order to do it. So, I mean, the initial offering of it will probably be really awesome for those who take advantage of it, just like anybody who has advantage of the new money when they first get it. Like the first people who have access to it, yeah, that's awesome. They can even say, hey, look, we deployed this for the last 5 years and look how wonderful of an experience it is for everybody. That's awesome. But then time will go on and it'll start to show itself as a problem and not as a solution. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for the $5. Simon, enjoy your content. Thanks. Well, thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate the $5 and the support for the channel. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun tonight. We got 452 people watching with 266 likes. Again, by hitting that like button and sharing the video, you get the YouTube algorithm to spread it around more. All right. Standard nursery. Yeah, I once rented a room in a house with 3 others. It worked well for the short term. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about it. If you could sacrifice some comfortable experience in order to load up on abundance, like cut back and not, like, what does he say? Industrious people who are eager to acquire property will not at first increase their expenditures. So if you can hold back on increasing your expenditures, I think that right there is the key, right? If you could do that for a decent amount of time in order to position yourself, and then after you position yourself, things can be a little bit easier for you after that. But it's like that initial like acquiring of the portfolio. For me, like I was thinking about it. It's hard, and I've heard this before from other people. It says like, the first 100,000 is the hardest to get to in cash. Like once you have $100,000, whether it's in cash or, stocks or whatever you got going on. And I'm not necessarily thinking like in the 401k, although that probably would be the same. There's something that kind of switches in your thoughts, because now like houses are available to you. Like you have the down payment for a house or a business that you could start, or you're watching your position on a good day like climb significantly, like being in cryptocurrencies, like a significant portion in cryptocurrencies. I see it move very dramatically over the course of a few days. And once it starts getting into that position, you start looking at things a whole lot different. Like a world of opportunity starts to open up. And so it's almost like a race to get to the 100 grand. Like if you could get to 100,000, I'm sure as time goes on, it's going to have to be pushed up a little bit higher. But it really does. It changes the way that you think and feel about everything that's really happening out there. And what's really funny about it is like it seemed so difficult for me to get $1,000. Like I remember when I was broke as hell, had no money, was deep in debt, drinking all the time and all that. It was like $1,000 was just an overwhelming amount of money. It was like, don't even ask, right? Don't even bother. It wasn't going to happen. But after I was able to position myself in which that I was able to save a little bit and pay off my debts and acquire that $1,000, and I thought, man, I'm able to acquire $1,000 a lot easier than I had ever done before. Of course, not drinking and paying attention to what you're doing. Of course, it's easier. But it still seems so hard to get to $10,000. Like I had the 1,000, I could get to 1,000, I could get a couple thousand, but then it seemed like it was so hard. It's like try and try and try. I could never really seem to get to the 10,000, and then I did it. Like I got to the 10, and it was just like, wow, man, what a struggle to get there. It just seems so hard. In fact, it seemed as hard to get to 10,000 as it seemed to get to 1,000. And then I realized it's just as hard to get to 100,000 as it was to get to the 10,000. Same thing, right? And this is the way it kind of works. It's like once you get into a position and once it starts rolling, it rolls significantly in a way that you look back and you're like, man, it was such a struggle to get to these like what seemed like milestones, but then really once you have achieved these certain positions, it seems so much easier. Like now, $10,000 can come and go inside of the portfolio because again, I'm heavy in cryptocurrencies. It happens in so fast. It's just like, wow, man, I remember when it was just like it took forever to get to 10 grand, and now I'm watching 10 grand come and go within a few weeks, or maybe even a few days. It's so incredible, man. Uh, all right, let's cruise up here. We got Will Christian. Thank you so much for the $5. As $1,000 is not a lot of money, not having 1,000 is a lot of money. The weird thing is like when you are 40 years old, your subconscious is pretty well locked in. Like it is very difficult to change the way that you really internally feel. Like you have to really focus in on it and do some serious work to change it. I feel like I feel like I never have enough money. I've always felt that way. My entire life I've always thought, "Oh man, we don't have enough money." It was an automatic thought. It has become very, very hard for me to change that mindset to say, yeah, we do have some money, right? Even though I know it, I see the bank accounts, I see, I know what I got, I know where it's at, I know everything that's happening on a daily basis. I look at it fairly regularly, but yet still the internal feeling is that it's not there. Like I don't have it. There's some sort of lacking that's existing in there. And I know that feeling of like not having $1,000 or not being able to acquire $1,000 or thinking that there's $1,000 bill out that, like $1,000 debt that I owe or something, and being such an overwhelming feeling like it would completely consume my day. I would like literally feel it in my chest and my stomach, and I would walk around carrying this energy of what this was, what the hell was I going to do to try and come up with this money in order to get this thing done, you know? And it was difficult. Like I remember how hard of an idea it was to try and come up with $1,000. It's the same right now. Right now, if somebody was to tell me, dude, you got to come up with $100,000, right? It would be the same feeling as back in the day trying to come up with $1,000. There's no difference in the feeling. Right? It's to understand and recognize what it is and why it's there. Why is that feeling even there? Do I live a life of lacking? Absolutely not, man. I mean, I got like I can do whatever the hell I want, I mean, and so I do not live a lack in actuality, when I literally walk through this life, I do not live a life of lacking. I could do whatever I want. I could go buy a car if I want. Like having the money to buy a car is just as good as having the car. Like I drove my dad's truck around for a couple of days, that new Tacoma had 1,000 miles. Like I'm like, yeah, man, this is so awesome, man. The brand new car hardly has any miles on it at all. Woo-hoo. And then after a few days, it was like losing that wonderfulness fairly quickly. Like it was still comfortable, it was still a nice car, but as far as like being like making me smile when I was driving it, that was only for the first few minutes. After that, it's just the car, right? Just like anything else. All right, so many people up in here. 463 people watching with 292 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. The what was that? Get used to the uncomfortable? Get used to feeling uncomfortable. Yeah, and I think like it's more of leaning into tension. Like it's like, most people try to avoid tension. I think leaning into tension is really where you want to go. Like if it raises some sort of feeling of like, oh man, I'm going to try and avoid this situation, lean into that. Like lean into that because that's where the magic is at. When you're worried, when you're scared, when you don't know what's going on, that's what you lean into. All right, moving on. Most people are one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. MMA freaks, you're absolutely right about that. Uh, we're all here. Meet bingo. We're all here. Meet bingo. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I can bring it. It doesn't seem to be working out too well to try and bring Meat Bingo back. Have to go to bed. Thank you and take care, all of you. Well, thank you, Tyra Masters. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. Good night. Atmospheric river coming. Yeah, it's coming like here in a couple of hours. We're gonna have almost 2 inches of rain in the next what 24 hours or something. It's gonna be an insane amount of rain. All right. I remember back in 2009, I was digging through my car to find quarters to buy bread and milk. I went from having everything to losing everything. The money was gone, and $1,000 was a lot at that point. Yeah, bullet traders. I mean, I here's the thing. I think what I think differently is that I'm not necessarily afraid of being poor, like being broke or not having anything. Like I'm not that doesn't scare me that much. Cuz for me personally, I don't think I really need that much stuff. Like I think I can maintain my existence pretty cheaply. It's my kids, right? Making sure that they have a decent place, making sure that they have everything that they need so that their existence while I'm getting them up and into this world, that existence is somewhat of a pleasurable, decent, secure, awesome life for them. Like that concerns me the most out of everything else. Um, so after that, like the idea of having money doesn't for a lot of people that's all they could just imagine. Oh man, if I only had $10 million, and they just kind of dream of the day they have $10 million and all the things that they would do if they had $10 million. And to me, I'm like, I don't know what I would do with $10 million that I wouldn't do today. I don't know. I mean, I guess having the number $10 million would be awesome, but I really have no idea what difference would be. I mean, I guess I would probably eat more ribeyes or something, but maybe travel more. There's some things that I would probably do that if I had the money, but there's really nothing stopping me from doing anything I want now. So I don't know why the money would be needed if I can do whatever I want now. It's just like, why would I want to interrupt that with the need to have $10 million in a bank account when I can just go do whatever I want now? You know, I think a lot of people have their priorities messed up as far as they put money in front of everything. They have to if I want to have something in my life, I have to have money. If I want that, I have money, 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 money. It's all about money. And even this channel, I think about it, I talk about money and economics and all this other stuff. Everybody focuses in on it and they make it like the obstacle in front of everything in front of them, for everything in their life. They want to have anything enjoy, they have to have money first to do it. And I'm thinking, no, that's absolutely incorrect. Everything is already existing out there. Money can help facilitate your ability to get to it, but it's not needed. It's already there. Most people then say, well, it's right there, but I can't get to it because I'm going to put this block up of money first. And that if I could get the money, then I can get the stuff. No, you can have the stuff. You don't need the money. The stuff is already there. It'll flow to you. A lot of times, money is the necessity to get there. How you get the money sometimes isn't the way that you were thinking that you needed in order to get the item that you want out there because everything is just out there in abundance always. It's just carry the energy that you need to get it. And that's, again, difficult for a lot of people because they live in scarcity mindset. I know I was one, right? I was very much one of those people. It was when I finally just didn't care anymore. That's really what did it, is when I finally just gave up and I was just like, you know what, I don't care. And it was just like, they were like, well, aren't you worried about, failing or whatever? It is like, no, I already failed. Like, I'm already failing. What difference does it make? It's to me, I just didn't care anymore. I wasn't worried about being embarrassed. I wasn't worried about anything anymore because I had already, like, I was at my, like, I was at the end. I was just like, there ain't nothing left here. I'm going to be in the gutter with nothing and no house, no family, and no job, and no money, and no nothing. And that's where I'm going to be. So whatever I do from here on, just go for it, no matter what it is. And that's what I did. I just went for it, no matter what it was. Hey, you want to go speak down in Houston? I was like, yeah, I do. See what happens from that. Go and speak in front of 850 people. Never been on stage before talking macroeconomics to millionaires. Are you kidding me? Like, talk about leaning into tension. Holy crap. I still am amazed that that happened. I look back on it, it was one of the greatest events one of the greatest things in my entire life, getting up on that stage in front of all those people and sharing my thoughts and ideas of what was taking place within the lumber industry. And I look back on that and I think to myself, holy moly, like, how in the world did that happen? Speaking on the same stage to the same audience as Ron Paul. All right. This guy, like, just followed and idolized for the longest time back when I was really involved in politics. And, I just didn't care. You're going to get up there and mess up, so what? I mean, I'll go as far, like, I thought to myself, just go as far as you can get. Like, this, like, just, until, like, just see how far you can get. That's it. That's what I thought. And so I didn't care. I just let go of everything else and just went for it. All right. I have 75 million Satoshis and I drive a POS beater. Well, good for you, Kev. How many is 75 million? How much is 75 million Satoshis? All right. Living in a van is salvation compared to home ownership. I don't know, cold matter, but, you know, living in a home with my family, my kids each have their own room, and I have a guest room for when my mom comes to visit, is about the coolest thing that I think I could possibly have that I didn't think I would ever have in my life. So, you know, if I was on my own, yeah, I'd be living in a van, no doubt. And I would be having I would own homes and live in a van. Isn't that what's funny? Because I would have rental properties and I would live in a van that was full of tools if I was by myself. I love Ron Paul. I never said that about any politician. I like Ron Paul too. And I was a huge fan of Ron Paul. I mean, many of you have seen that hat, that End the Fed hat that I wear, that black one. I've had that since back 2000. When did I have that hat made? I think I had that hat made. My wife had it made in 2007. So it's a really old cap. I've had for a long time. Vegas has gotten greedy. I won't be back. I don't blame you there. Is Ron Paul the Las Vegas entertainer? Huh. You guys still here? Love it. Capitalism is being distorted into something else. It's happening all night. It's great to see you up in here, brother. 75 million Satoshis is just under 1,200. Oh, right on. That's the goal, Simon, but yeah, it's not for everyone. I get it. All right. I think I saw he when I was in Vegas. What are you talking about? All right, you guys having fun? Are we done here for the night? SNAP benefits gone come November, and people will be begging to put back on volunteering to remain poor. Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate circumstances that so many people, and I see it all over the place. Like I mean, I don't know, maybe it's prevalent everywhere, but here in Oregon, I mean, when I work retail, I see people open their wallets and I can see it right there. I mean, it's a blue card, it's a blue, it's an Oregon Trail card is what it's called. And I see it in people's wallet and I see it so frequently and so many people too. And I'm thinking, man, you got that EBT card up in there, huh? And I mean, I'm not trying to judge them. I'm just thinking like, I've never in all my life, actually, that's not true. During COVID, they gave it. They like literally, I don't necessarily think it was forced upon the people, but it was almost like you didn't, like it was given to the family. Right? Like we had, and I forget where, like Sarah was telling me where it came from, and as far as like everybody getting this, it was the only time that I remember us actually using it. But other than that, like even when I was at my brokest, we never went and got any assistance from anybody anywhere. Probably should have. Like I look back on it, I'm like, dude, you should have gone and taken that stuff when you could, like when you needed it the most. But I never did, not once. And the reasoning is for this exact thing. The moment that they take it away, the painful experience that comes from it is going to be overwhelming. These people are not going to know what to do. And they're going to have to like scrimp and save and figure out, cut back, on whatever it is that they got going on out there to try and figure out something to eat because they became so reliant on it. And the moment that it's gone, they are not going to know what to do. And that's scary, right? And that's essentially what I was telling Sarah, my wife. It's like that's why we can't go on this because at some point the government may not be there. And if they're not there and we're used to this, then it's going to be a very difficult road to be down. She agreed with that. So we've never taken assistance on anything except for that one little blip during COVID. uh, better to grow a garden for your food. Yeah. Food stamps, real paper. We couldn't wait to pick ourselves up and get off the food stamps. Yeah. Grow your food if you can. Yeah, I mean, growing food, I mean, obviously it's a great hobby and it's really fun to grow like a lot of your own food and stuff. But a lot of people have to be kind of realistic with it. They're not going to be able to grow all their own food. Now, if you can grow an abundance of food and then trade it for the variety of foods that you need, that might be something, like you can grow like an overabundance of one particular thing that is very much in demand and then trade it for whatever you need. And that might be a possibility out there, but for the most part, to try and grow all your own food, unless you are, happen to be on a piece of land that can do it, you have the skills to do it. Most of the time, people are probably not going to have the ability to do enough of it for themselves to actually provide any kind of real, you know, real amount of calories, right? Because like I'm trying to think of like people who live in apartments or even in small areas, like you don't have much property at all. It, in those cases, then those people would have to like garden share. They would have to find places to garden. And in that sense, like driving to the garden and then working it, like all this expense that goes into it, it becomes very like ineffective, as far as just being able to just go out there and buy the food in general. For security reasons, to be, self-sustaining, then that's a whole other story, right? To be able to just say, hey, no, man, I can do it all here for myself right here on this land and work really hard at doing it. I mean, I'm not saying it isn't possible, but you have to have the facility to make that happen. And that's not necessarily very likely. You still have to get variety, which means that you have to like trade or do something to acquire the things that you can't grow or, raise yourself. And that's just like my idea on it. Canning, being able to can food, I think that's probably the biggest skill Because even if you're not able to grow food, if you are able to come across an abundance of food for a particular reason, like, whatever item went on sale down at the grocery store and you bought just all of it and you can can it all up. Like, and if you live in an apartment, you can do that, right? Or go hunting and fishing or something like that and be able to process that and can it up yourself. That is something that you can do in a very, tight confined area. You don't need a whole lot to make that happen. And, you know, in the end, it's probably one of the better ways to secure, your food into the future is to be able to can it. So to me, that's it. That's the number one, is to learn how to can. Salt beef, the old style corned beef, so delicious. We've been getting rural, more like hobby farming, planning on spending time with it in the retirement. I just remember an older guy telling us about not having meat during the Great Depression. Growing garlic is super easy and highly rewarding. And then our and there are great canning tutorials here on YouTube. Yeah, absolutely, Miles. I keep telling my wife to do them. Like, she should do some of these like, she canned up a bunch of stuff the other day, and I'm like, "Did you record it?" And she was like, "Oh, I forgot." And I'm like, "How can you forget to do that?" Like, I don't understand. Just set the camera up and just record it. You don't even have to say anything. Just do it. But she's just so used to, like, doing it. It's just second nature. It's just like she don't even think about it. Both corned beef and pastrami are super good. Yeah, I agree. What will happen in the what will happen is the state will recognize this fact and they will dump the coffers into EBT programs, then they will cry and beg. A lot of veggies and fruits that you buy from the store can be grown after you consume it. You can get a car for 50% off manufacturer's suggested retail price, 2 to 3 year olds, and lease trade in. Why pay full price when someone else can take the beating? People that can afford brand new still buy pre owned. You should do a mushroom hunt video. Kitchen sessions with chef? Absolutely. That sounds like a good time. In fact, right now, guys, you want to see one? Hold on here. You guys like mushrooms? Let me show you something. I need a flashlight. I need to get a flashlight. I have destroying angels growing out in my yard right now. They're like the world's deadliest mushroom. Not the deadliest. They're like second to. They're like right next to the world's deadliest mushroom. Anyway, I got a bunch of them growing out in my yard right now. I want to go show you guys, but I don't have a flashlight. So where do I have one? Is there one in here? Oh, I can't get the damn thing. Well, I'll show you guys another time, but yeah, cool. Alright. Not Amanita muscarias. Those are fly amanitas. Those are the big red caps with the white dots. Um, these are Amanita. I can't remember the name of them. I'm sorry, guys. That's terrible. I used to know all these things so easy. Destroying Angels. Just look them up. What was it? Verosas? Amanita verosas or something like that? Get the flashlight. All right. Corned beef is brisket. That's expensive too. Bisque porregia. No, it's like Verosia or something like that. My library does a seed sharing and seed library. How will the collapse look like for the bottom 80%? Will it be noticeably painful like past times? Is it happen? Actually, no. I think most of the 80% probably won't even recognize there's any pain at all. Consider, like, other than they'll be wondering why it is that they don't own cars or buy houses, but instead do like Uber and share, like it's going to be share everything, like, rent every, like, they just, you know, because you won't be able to afford anything to buy. It'll just be, you know, your daily expenses. And as we move into cryptocurrencies and tokenization, I can really see things being done on the fly. Like, you know, as you're using electricity, it's coming right out of your wallet at the time you're using it. So it won't be like a bill, it'll just be automatically happening. Or, say, for example, if you're driving on the road, even though you probably will have autonomous cars by then. But, you know, for an example, like an idea behind it, if you're driving on the road and you stay within the speed limit and you let, you know, passer like people who are speeding pass by and you just kind of drive the road really carefully, your insurance goes down. But if you speed a lot or whatever, and it happens on the fly. So as you're like going down, you know, you're speeding or you're passing people or whatever, as you're making that trip, your insurance is paying, you know, you're paying more as you're going, you know, and so it's just like, I see things happening like on the fly. So there is no like bill anymore. It's like in motion. You guys want to see that mushroom? Where do I have a flashlight at? All right. I purchased a whole bunch of 6-inch hooks that have weighting. Huh. Goonies Adventure. It's a scam with the insurance. Huh. Coverage dropped immediately if you were speeding and got in an accident. uh, yeah, I mean, that may end up happening anyway. Let's do shrooms. Liberty caps. No. All right, let's go find these things. Amanita veroses. Ow. Oy. This thing open now. Let me see. I gotta see if there's a little flashlight in this car here. Okay. Here, you guys sit there for just a second. Oh, huh. No kidding. Don't work. Oh, bummer. Well, there was a flashlight, but it's dead. Actually, you know, we might be able to see it just from the light of the house. Alright, let's go check it out, guys. Alright, I don't know. It's still pretty dark here. Can you see? You see him? Boom. There's some baby ones. There's my hand right there. But that's them. There's another one right there. Anyway. Whoa. Those are them. Those are the destroying angels. And I probably got like maybe 20 or 30 of them growing out in the yard right now. They're just little white, look like button mushrooms. They're just little white mushrooms. And they grow, I don't know, maybe 4 inches or so across the top. Anyway, they don't really look like much, and they don't look that dangerous from what they are. But yeah, they're like super poisonous. Alrighty, guys. How late is this? Hour and 43 minutes into it. Alright. You're watching a mushroom search. Alright, Simon, do another video with your receipts from your grocery shopping. Oh, I should have did that the other day. We did a really good one. I will. We'll do it again. Sarah, yeah, I forgot how much she had saved the other day, but she did a really good one. I'm like, man, we should have saved that video right there. All right, anyone else catch the YouTube video of the mushroom with the electrodes attached to the cap playing the keyboard? Huh. Start a garden business by planting in retired people's yards to pay their taxes and provide jobs, foods. Oh, that's kind of an idea. Time to get back to the fam. Night, y'all. Yep, good night. Uh, all right, you guys are awesome. Not sure what else you want to cover. We really busted a move here on the Cantillon speech, and I thought the beginning of the video was awesome, and it was a great conversation. I mean, we had 400 people watching for the majority of the for the show here. Up over 500 at one point. That's amazing. Thank you everybody who has hit that like button, and thank you very much for all those super chats, because you guys are so awesome with the super chats and supporting the Uneducated Economist. And again, there's really no better way to support the Uneducated Economist than to hit that like button and comment and sharing the video. Always supporting the Uneducated Economist is very much appreciated. Helping to keep the channel independent and sponsor free. All right. Do you expect Nail to make a rebound? The problem with that is that to know that to understand that Nail is, it's a 3-time leveraged ETF. So unless the underlying asset is on its way up, even if the underlying asset is going sideways, Nail will deteriorate. So it has to constantly be moving up. And right now, I am not exactly excited for the home builders. Now, at the time when I was buying into it, when I made that call back in June, there was a dramatic drop in Nail, and you could see in the home builders that there was a shift that was happening within their stock. So to me, it just felt right that the home builder stock was going to be moving up, because it just felt like it was at the bottom. Like it wasn't going to get worse from here. It can. I'm not saying it wasn't. It just felt like it was at the bottom. I mean, it's June, right? It's middle of summer. And this is typically when you would see a lot of builders getting active. So it made sense that you would see that stock moving up just based on that kind of idea of it. But right now, I don't see that necessarily being the case. And unless that home builder stock is moving up, then Nail will be going down. Even if this home builder stock went sideways, Nail would still go down. So I'm not expecting any kind of rebound from that. But again, like, who can predict the future, right? You'll have to have chip anyway in digital society sooner or later. Now we got them in the debit cards only. Let's see here. They will insist that you have a chip under your skin and the forehead. All right, well, those are good times. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Again, 373 people watching. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. $26.90, because you guys are always so generous with the super chats and helping to support the Uneducated Economist. I can never thank you guys enough. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.